you for joining us on your summer. We hope you're having a great summer break, especially after the year you have all been through. So hopefully you were able to decompress and disconnect and enjoy yourselves. So today, Lauren and I'm Amy Fosek, and this is Lauren Swissman,
Hello.
and we are two of the technology and innovation coaches. We're going to be presenting on making an impact with iReady. If you look to the bottom of the previous screen, and we'll pull that up again for you. Here you go. If you look to the bottom of your screen, you'll see that there is a bit.ly so that you can follow along with the slide deck that we'll be going through. So it's bit.ly/feedback PUSD. Lauren's going to also add that into the chat for us. As a reminder, this is a 1-hour training. It will be recorded. So please note that you will be on the recording if you are showing your pictures, which we really appreciate it. It's great to see everyone's smiling faces. This webinar will be posted on the Canva professional development website, or excuse me, catalog for you to view 48 hours after we wrap up this recording. And if you have questions during the presentation, please utilize the chat feature. Lauren and I will be monitoring that, and we'll get to your questions as soon as we can during the presentation. More resources can be found on our YouTube channel or on our website at powausd.com/PUSD Innovate. And as always, we will encourage you to follow us on Twitter or Instagram at PUSD Innovate. So again, we will be going over making an impact with feedback with iReady specifically. And today our focuses that we'll be focused on are going over the feedback cycle, looking at the components of the feedback cycle, the importance of meaningful feedback and implementing that into your classroom practices, and how iReady can support you in providing meaningful feedback to and with your students, and the usage of iReady reporting. We know that there are a lot of reports found in iReady, so we're really going to take a deep dive into those reports. So our agenda for today, so you'll know kind of the order of events, is first we're going to look at just meaningful feedback. What is it, and what are those components that comprise the feedback cycle? We're going to again take a deep dive into those iReady reports, and we will have time at the end for a Q&A session.
All right, thank you, Amy. Okay, so before, like Amy said, we can dive into really iReady and all those tools, we need to really step back and think about, why are we using iReady, right? We have this tool, it gives us so much data, but really what is its purpose, and how can we really capitalize on all that it has to offer to really transform student learning, right? And that really goes for any type of online learning platform and assessment tool that we use. How can we really maximize the student evidence to enhance what our students are doing in the classroom, to really enhance our instruction? And that's where this feedback loop comes in. We know from research that assessments are most powerful when we put them into action, right? That first piece here is gathering student information. And yes, that can be an assessment like iReady. That can be the personalized instruction assessments on there as well, those quizzes that the students get. But it can also be student information from things like surveys. How do students feel about a class? What is their reflection on how the work that they're doing is going? It might be from conferences. We get all of that student data and evidence, and then we analyze it, right? We might have those data meetings, we have in-depth looks, we have conferences, we really analyze that data. And then there's that third piece, right? We're taking action. And that's often, especially in a school year like the one we just had, where we kind of get stuck. And I am totally guilty of that. I look at this data, I say, wow, there's so much I can do with this. I can make small groups. I can really kind of maybe change up my pacing or fine tune some of my lessons. But it can often feel like a lot, or you're not sure where to get started. So we're going to talk really today about that taking action piece, right? And then once we take action, we end up collecting more student information and continuing that feedback loop again. And that is really where our instruction changes and we really see a difference in what students are learning. So let's look at that take action piece. We tend to think of it in three big buckets of ways that we can take action. That first big bucket is taking action to inform our instruction, right? So I'm seeking out reliable evidence that will continue to inform what I'm doing in my classroom. It's guiding my whole group, my small group, my playlists, my pacings, my flexible seating, and so much more. Here's an example that's not iReady. Maybe I give an exit ticket after a lesson. I quickly sort the tickets. I look for areas of need. And then the following day, I pull a small group to target with those students who maybe they missed a specific question or they were struggling with a specific skill. I pull them into a small group, right? That data I use to just right there and then plan a group and inform my instruction. When we're doing these things, we're really making sure not just okay, I'm following along with the lesson plans I pre-created, but I'm adjusting my instruction based off of what my students need. That second bucket here is we're shifting away from instruction and putting more of the actionable direct feedback to students to improve their work. Now, I'm totally guilty of this, and I still do this where I say, good job, great job, or needs improvement, or 4 out of 10, or 90% I put on their test. But when I step back and think about it, yes, that's great. I'm giving them feedback. They know how they've done. I'm maybe even giving positive reinforcement. But what is this doing for my students that they can really take charge of their own learning, right? What is that good job setting them forth to do with their own student agency? So when I step back and think about it, how can I give them specific actionable feedback that allows them to move forward? So for example, rather than giving them an 8 out of 10 on their essay, I could write a comment on their Google Doc that says, I noticed that when you write contractions that you are forgetting the apostrophe. Here's a quick video on how to write contractions, right? So I'm giving them something that really lets them know what it is that's specific, and it can actually let them set goals for things that they want to work on. And we can also, of course, do this with their strengths as well. By doing this, we're really honoring their progress by citing those specific things and allowing them to consider that next step to reach a goal. That third bucket here is peer-to-peer and student self-assessment. So we do this a lot, especially in writing. They give a peer review to their work. They're not just hearing, often we think of feedback from teacher to student, but it's really powerful when they're hearing from their peers and also when they're self-assessing. That really helps them build those metacognitive skills and give them opportunities to be self-reflective, right? Ultimately, we want our students to be independent, lifelong learners, and directly teaching these skills gives them greater insights into supporting themselves and being advocates as learners. For example, it can be as simple as when they're turning in their exit ticket, maybe they write on the top a number 1 through 4, how they felt they did with it. Did they feel like a novice or did they feel like an expert or somewhere maybe in between? Just putting those little things in there can really allow students to be more in charge of their learning. So again, we have these 3 buckets here. Let's take a look at what taking action looks like with these 3 buckets with iReady. So just as an example, these are not an exhaustive list, just examples. To inform instruction with iReady, you might use something like the instructional groupings report, which actually makes groups for you and tells you exactly the skills that that group needs to work on. It takes a lot of that work out for you, right? You don't have to have up all your spreadsheets looking at scores and data. It does that work for you. And we're going to take a look at that report in just a minute. An example of feedback to students would be using that iReady data to inform student goal setting and conferences. So when I taught using iReady, I would print out the students' diagnostic results. And when I would meet with them one-on-one to goal set, we would go through the things that are their strengths and areas of need, and it really allowed me to target and help them set goals best for them. And lastly, providing time for students to reflect on their own iReady progress and goals. Especially with an online program, we can kind of, and I have totally done this, got in the habit of saying, okay, go ahead, make sure you get your minutes done. But if we step back and think about it, we have to make sure that students know that quality is better than quantity, right? Of course, we want them spending enough time on the online learning platform. But if we think about it, we want them to really have those pass rates that are high. That is what's most important. Of course, we would want to make sure that they have a higher pass rate rather than be on there for over an hour and just kind of be clicking through things. So really having them step back and kind of reflect on their iReady progress and the things that they're working on there. And they can even speak with you about maybe it being too easy or too difficult, and you can adjust their lesson path. And we'll talk about that, how you do that in a minute. This next slide is just a resource for you. I'm not going to go ahead and read through it, but if you're trying to target a specific one of these take action buckets, here are some reports that would be best to look at. All right, we're going to go ahead and dive into the reports now. There are so many reports in iReady, and I wish I could get to them all today, but we're going to focus on these 4. We'll have time at the end, again, if you have questions about other reports or want to dive deeper with some of these. We'll start with the diagnostic results and growth reports, and then move into instructional groupings and personalized instruction reports. Right. So I'm on my iReady dashboard, and just an FYI, this is a demo account, so I'm not revealing any student information and data that might be sensitive. These are example students. And we're going to go ahead and go up to reports, diagnostic results, and I'm going to go ahead and click reading. So from this window, we can see, and I'm going to go ahead and pretend that that's my class. We can see our overall class, how they did on a specific diagnostic. So for this one, it's the beginning of the year diagnostic. So this might actually look a little bit different than it did last year. Last year, it may have looked a little bit like this, a 3-level placement where we just had a key that showed us on grade level or above, 1 grade level below, or more than 1 grade level below, green, yellow, and red. They've created now a 5-level placement that gives us on or above, early, here it is, 3 or more grade levels below is the red with the lines, 2 grade levels below, 1 grade level below, early on grade level, or mid or above grade level. So it even separated it into additional 5 categories so that we can even have a greater insight into where our students are. So as a teacher, just even a quick look at this class diagnostic data, I can see, okay, my students are set with phonological awareness. They've got that great. They've got it down. But what I can see is going to be one of their biggest domains of need is vocabulary, right? I only have 2 students above and 1 student who is on grade level in this area. So I know right away that I'm going to have to go ahead and look at my whole group instruction and know that most of my students will benefit from having vocabulary there. When I scroll down, I can see all of my students, and this is also a great way to kind of look overall as a class how they are doing. You can sort by placement, by growth measures, by domain. There's lots of things that you can do in here. We're going to go ahead and look at one specific student. So this is a diagnostic result for one specific student. And again, I can change their diagnostic here. And I can see from this student, the domains they are on, above, or below grade level with. And these 3 right here, these foundational domains, I can already see that this student has tested out or had the max score. And this is something that I don't need to focus on with this student. And that vocabulary is going to be one of the greatest areas of need. And comprehension is something we need to work on as well. As tech and innovation coaches, one of the biggest questions we always get is, tell me more about this number up here, right? Especially with maps, the scoring was a bit different. So we were used to having a set number being a specific expectation for a grade, whereas with iReady, it's a bit different. What we always say is to kind of shift our mindset around moving away from the number and more to the domain placement, right? Because that number 524 doesn't tell me a whole lot. What's most important here is how they're doing in their domains, right? I know this student has 3 areas of their domains that they're doing above grade level with, they've mastered, and 3 areas that they need to work on. And that is the information that will really help that student and really help my instruction for that student. So looking at these domains, I want to know more information, right? This student struggles with vocabulary. Let's figure out what's going on there. The more I scroll down, the more information you get. So down here where I see vocabulary, I want to figure out what's going on. I click on vocabulary, and this is something I absolutely love. This paragraph here, they give you developmental analysis. I love using this phrasing when I'm talking to parents, when I'm conferencing with students, when I'm writing progress reports. I absolutely love how they break down what exactly it is about vocabulary for this student. Then I look on the left-hand side, and these are the can-dos. And especially when I'm conferencing with students, I always love starting here, right? We want to start with the student's strengths. This student can understand word relationships. They can sort words into categories, they can define words. There are some things that this student is really great at with vocabulary. The next steps for instructions are right here on the right-hand side. So these are things that we will want the student to target on their playlist, things that we want to make sure that they're working on their homework, whatever it might be. I automatically here have things that I know that this student can work on. So with all of this information, we can also use the next report, Diagnostic Growth, to monitor their progress. So this is just a quick report here. We can look at their growth throughout the year with those 3 diagnostics, right? And I can see here, again, it's not so much about the points, their score, but actually their growth. So we can see from 1 to 2, this student made a jump, but didn't make as big of a jump from 2 to 3. iReady's complex math data always puts together a typical growth measure for that student, and stretch, meaning it's possible, but it would take there might be a lot going on to get them to that stretch goal. So while the student did make growth, it wasn't as much growth as they would have expected that student to make. Again, still great that we're seeing growth here, but this can be a great report for you to look at to see, okay, does this student need more interventions, right? If I didn't see any growth here, that might be kind of an alert for me to say, okay, we maybe need to change interventions, meet with parents, look at what's going on in the classroom, all those sorts of things to kind of monitor to make sure they're making progress.
This is also a great tool to look at, not only for students when you're looking at those who are scoring below grade level, but also those students who are scoring mid-range or above grade level. The goal of all of this is to make a year's growth, right? So regardless of where a student comes in, to ensure that they're showing a year's growth. So also checking in to make sure those students who are scoring above level are continuing to make growth and move forward with their gaining of their knowledge.
And again, just to, I'm not sure if I said this earlier, this is one assessment, right? Or 3 assessments compared here. This is just one aspect of student evidence that we have. And of course, there's always going to be students that maybe had a bad day where they were testing or had a great day while they were testing. And we need to consider this in the whole holistic view of the student and all of the other assessments that they do take. Another way to break down, not just looking at the assessment as a whole, but is to come down here and look at the domains. So I can see, okay, the student didn't make great growth between diagnostic 2 and 3. And now I can see which domains specifically they didn't make progress with. So I can see these 3 domains down here. There wasn't really a jump to a new placement in diagnostic 2 to diagnostic 3. Okay, our next report that we're going to go to is the instructional groupings report. So I'm going to go ahead up here to reports and then go to instructional groupings. I talked about this a bit earlier to inform our instruction. This is such a time saver report. I was that teacher that made my reading groups in the beginning of the year from my assessment data or diagnostic one and reading core assessments. I made those groups, I named those groups, they knew their names in the groups and laminated that paper, put it on the wall. But I realized I was doing my students a disservice by not changing those groups enough. But I know that a lot of work goes into deciding, okay, how should I reorganize my groups to best serve my students? Or do I need to do supplemental groups on top of my reading groups, right? What is the best fit for my students? The reason I love this report so much is that it does that work for you. So for example here, if I want to say, okay, from diagnostic 2, what are great groups for my students? I'm going to go ahead and click on grouping 1. And right away, I see my 4 students in this group. And when I click on grouping description, it tells me why. So these kids are grouped together because they're below grade level in phonics and vocabulary. If I scroll down even more, I get exactly what in phonics and what in vocabulary this group needs to work on. Scroll down again, and I get even more detail. Right away, I have an objective for my group. So if I want to start this group tomorrow, I'm set and ready to go, right? Focus on decoding longer words. I can look at these tools for instruction on the right, and I have some resources to get that lesson started right away. So again, this really helps me create groups in my classroom that target exactly what these students need. I might still keep my reading groups or my book club groups, but maybe pull these for supplemental instruction, small groups. I might put these skills on the playlist to make sure these students are working on it. I might make sure these things are part of these students' goals. Again, really helping me to kind of take the work out of analyzing that data because it does it for me here. I also love this because I'm certainly one to struggle sometimes with how do I help my students who are above grade level? So this grouping 5 here, you can see they're all on or above grade level. And it tells me that they're together because they're on grade level in phonics and on or above grade level in comprehension. But these students could really use help with more complex vocabulary instruction to really get them to that next reading level. So again, I scroll down and here we go. My first objective for the lesson to deepen the knowledge of academic language and some things that I can do with them here on the right. All right. And our last report is going to be the personalized instruction report. Now, unlike the reports we've been looking at, this report is based off mostly based off of their online adaptive learning. While it does take the diagnostic into consideration, it's mostly for their personalized instruction that they do online. So if I look here, it says monitor instruction. I'm going to click view class progress. Then I can see, given a specific date range, maybe I can make it last month, I can see the average time on task for my class, the lessons passed, and then a breakdown for each student. And here's another great place to look at, okay, are my students contributing quality work to what they're doing here, right? I can see how many lessons they passed, their pass rate here, and their time on task, their average time on task, to make sure that, okay, I want to make sure my students are really reflecting and being mindful about the work that they're doing here on iReady. When I click on a specific student, I can get even more detailed information about how that student is doing with their online adaptive learning. So I can see this student here is tested again, same student as before, out of these 3 foundational domains. And we knew that their greatest area of need was vocabulary. So you can see here, this student has been working on vocabulary extensively and has made a lot of growth. This beginning bar line was their diagnostic 1, and the circle is where they're at now. So a question we often get is, why are they only working on 2 domains? Why not have all 3 of these open? Or if they have a need to work on all areas, why are only 2 being worked on? iReady's program works is that it really focuses on their most areas of need, so maybe 1 or 2 domains, rather than do surface level of all of the domains of need. So not that it won't eventually open up another domain, but it wants to make sure it really hits hard that area that they need the most work in, which for the student was vocabulary. Once they had made progress with that, then maybe another domain might open. Right. And when I look down here, I can see the lessons that they're doing, any lessons passed, failed, time spent, all of that great data here. So we're going to go ahead and jump back for a second. We want to go ahead and look here at all the students. Let me go ahead to current week. You may have seen on the left-hand side here, these alerts. This is really the only time that you need to intervene in their online learning. An important thing to note is that this is different from a site like Khan Academy, where you need to assign something for them to be working on. This is personalized and adaptive for each student. So given their diagnostic one, it'll start them somewhere like that sample students we were looking at with vocabulary, and then adjust with everything that they're doing. If the lesson was too hard, they move backwards. If the lesson was too easy, they jump them forward. So it's really set for that what that student needs, and it should not coincide with exactly what you're doing in the classroom. We got a lot of questions last year at saying, for example, I'm doing cause and effect in my room, and I want my students to be doing cause and effect lessons on iReady. The purpose of iReady is not to coincide and match exactly what you're doing. It's meant to fill in those gaps, right? So maybe your student is working, one student is working on something you've already done, but that they didn't master. Or maybe that student is a little bit ahead of where you're at in the class, but they're getting a little bit of a preview of what you're going to be doing in the future, and it's setting them up for success. So really try and think about the program as more of a personalized path for that student, not so much to coincide and be extra work or supplemental work to what is in class. It's doing what you wish you could do. Give each student something, an activity based on what it is exactly that they need. It's done that work for you. Now, given that, there are times you may need to intervene with this online instruction. So that's when we see these alerts here. The first one you'll see for a student is the orange exclamation point, and that means the student did not pass multiple lessons in a row within the same domain. This is a heads up to, excuse me, to you saying, hey, this student might be struggling a bit. This is a good time for you to jump in with classroom instruction. So there's that first bucket piece of informing your instruction. So if I click on this student, I can see exactly what they're struggling with. So it looks like determining the meanings of related words, they did not pass twice. And even the second time they did it, their score was even lower. So I know, okay, they're struggling. I need to do something about this. So when I click on this lesson, I get even more detail. I can see exactly the instruction and quiz they got and the standards associated with it. So this is telling me I need to pull this student for a small group, or I need to, do some reteaching, do some flipped learning, have them on the computer watching a video, whatever it might be that's best for that student to help them move forward with this. Once I've intervened, we can put them back onto iReady and have them give this lesson another shot. And then hopefully with that intervention, they pass. Now, if we've intervened and they still do not pass that lesson, that is where we see the red X that we see here. That means the student did not pass 2 consecutive lessons twice each within the same domain. At this point, iReady will turn the domain off. So we can see for this student, it was turned off, right? That means we've hit that level of frustration or challenge for that student that they shouldn't be doing this independently online, right? They've gone outside of that zone of proximal development. This is another alert for a teacher to say, okay, I need to intervene again here. What was it that they did not pass? And I can see defining word meanings was a struggle for this student. So I really need to intervene here again to help them with this skill. I'll do interventions, I'll work with them. And then of course, as professionals, as we're all great teachers here, we can make that judgment when we want this domain to turn back on. So maybe I work with this student for a week. We get really detailed into those determining word meanings. I feel like they've really gotten some good skills to apply here on iReady. I can view this and I can turn the domain back on. And that student can go in and give it another shot. Now, so we do that intervention when we see a flag. We have to intervene again when the domain is turned off. But what happens if that student is still struggling? They still did not pass that determine word meanings lesson. Then what? Then and only then would be a good time to adjust their placement. So I would go down and find that lesson they got stuck on. Here it is. Oh, that's a different one. Oh, no, there. And I might move them back, right? I might say, okay, maybe they need to go back and start with a different lesson. Once I've adjusted their placement back, given what I know about that student, they'll have to do a repeat of some of the previous lessons they've done, depending on where they started. And then they'll see that determined word meanings lesson again later on in the school year, when hopefully they have more skills to be successful at completing that.
Lauren, Vicki asked a great question
Sure.
in the chat. Can you scroll up just a little bit so we can see perfect the domains and their progress? So Vicki was asking if the change in the bar graph is from lessons that they completed or when they were reassessed, such as new scores. So changes in the bar graph are a combination of actually both. So as they move along on their personal pathway, you'll see them start to move. As well as when they take new diagnostics, it will be adjusted. So you may see, maybe if you had a student who took diagnostic 1, they had their bar graph and they were placed, maybe they were just having an off day. So they were placed, let's say in grade 1, kind of mid-year. And then they started doing the adaptive learning portion of iReady, and the program realized, okay, wait, they should actually be in mid-grade 2. You'll see kind of that jump in the graph and chart as they move along. So if you look at this one, let's just say on the comprehension. So maybe they did start here at the beginning of grade 2, and they were moving pretty drastically because of improvements that they were making, and the program realized it was actually too easy for them. So it will bump them ahead as needed.
Yep. So for some students, you might not see anything different in the diagnostic. It'll just confirm that they're at where they need to be at. But like Amy said, it will adjust based on that diagnostic. And let's say that student, maybe had a bad testing day or they did really well in there, it will adjust again based on how they're performing on their day-to-day online instruction. Great question. All right. So again, the times that we want to adjust instruction is very rare. It's really only when that domain gets shut off, you're intervening, you're helping with that lesson, and they're still struggling. That is really the only time we want to adjust lesson placement. And I'm going to go ahead and show you where we can do that again. So I hit assess and teach, instruction, personalized instruction. And on this top bar here, I can turn a domain on and off for a student, or I can adjust their lesson placement, picking the student and where they need to be adjusted to. Again, that's only really if they're struggling with that. And it's very rare that you actually have to adjust it, because I do think iReady does a great job of putting them where they need to be. So those are all 4 reports that we've gone over today. Of course, I could probably do a session on just one report because there's so much in them. And I know that was super quick as we went through it, but I want to be mindful of our time here as well. So Amy's going to share just a few more things on how we can really maximize these reports, and then we'll have some time for questions at the end.
Yes, so we have also attached just some resources for you to use, edit, look at on the slide deck that you have access to. So this one is just goal setting for student agency. So it is just a basic goal setting chart using the iReady format. So really looking at their student strengths, what their goals are, and what their next steps might be. We have also linked to different iReady goal setting worksheets that they have actually developed. So those are linked on there if you want to kind of go through there and see what's out there. Some recommended reports on here we've also linked. So again, the ones we went over. So diagnostic results, diagnostic growth for the student, and the personalized instruction summary. We know it was a lot of information and going through different reports, and you maybe saw it and then go back and say, I don't remember how to get there. So we also went ahead and linked different resources that show you how to get to the report. So the diagnostic results, here's how you get here. Here's the what and the why behind it. And then, okay, now I'm here. Now what do I do with this? What's next? And then the next one we went ahead and linked was the instructional groupings report. So just as a reminder, the instructional groupings report is based off of the diagnostic data. So it's not inclusive of their adaptive path that they're going along. It is just looking at that diagnostic data. So really, when we're looking at instructional groupings, they are pretty pure and you can use them accordingly. Sometimes though, you'll look and say, I'm not sure why this student was here, but it's because, again, this is just one snapshot of the student, and maybe they had a great day and maybe they didn't. So that's where you're really going to take into account those other assessments, the other proof of learning that you've been seeing with what the student's doing in class when you're making those groups. At the next level, we've also seen it. I know some of our schools may do collaborative grouping, whether that's through a teacher or an impact teacher. So we've seen great ways for admin to pull reports where they can look at the grade level as a whole and really target it through that lens. Like, let's not look at the students as these are my students. Let's look at these as these are our students. How can we best support them in their learning journey? So that's another feature that iReady, those grouping reports, can offer you. So thank you guys so much for joining us. Lauren and I will stay on till the end of the hour, but we really want to value your time. And we're here to answer any questions that you may have. If questions come up after this session, please feel free to reach out to us at any time at edtech@howeusd.com. We are here to support you in any ways that we can.
Thank you, everyone. What is it? Feedback PUSD? I believe so. Let me go back. Yes, there it is.